What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel. Special guest joining the show today, Scott Van Slyke, of course, who played for the Dodgers from 2012 to 2017. Scott, we appreciate you being here. How's life? How's retirement? How are things going?
Everything's good. I live in St. Louis, so the fall here is awesome. It's like 50, 65 degrees out. You get to go outside and blow leaves every day. But life's good, man. We just moved into a new house, so you can see I'm doing some drywall, getting stuff out. So
keeping yourself busy.
Yeah, that's right.
Love it. Love it. Well, let's dive right in. I mean, you're a baseball fan. Obviously, you grew up around the game. If folks are following you on Twitter, they know that you're still engaged in what's going on. I'm curious to hear your thoughts now that the World Series has ended. Like, what did you make of the 2021 version of the Dodgers? And as you watched kind of things come to an end, is like, what went wrong, or did anything go wrong? Did it just sort of bad luck and bad timing?
Well, I think you're talking about a back-to-back season for winning the World Series trophy. That's really hard to do. Not a lot of teams do that. And if they happen to do it the second time, they usually do it a third time. So there's something about that winning back-to-back it's hard to do. Obviously, you follow the Dodgers. They had so many injuries. And the fact that they won that many games is incredible, not to mention like a mid-season sideshow that went on. So, the fact that you had guys like Clayton Kershaw, Justin Turner, Chris Taylor, those guys that have been there, they've won it. They've been successful for lots of years. They're able to just show up to the field and play baseball. So, it was cool.
And for you, I'm curious because, unfortunately for yourself, what it's like to have a team that has aspirations of winning the World Series, expectations of winning the World Series. I think it was interesting as a fan to hear some of the quotes afterwards, because sometimes I feel like fans are actually more bummed out than the players are. And I don't mean that as like the players don't care, but as much like the players seem to have a healthy sense of perspective of just how hard it is to win the World Series and like to sort of, put everything emotionally into this basket of winning a World Series. So like, how would you maybe try to explain to a fan what it's like to be part of a team that has an unbelievable season, but maybe just comes up short of the one ultimate goal?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to say it is that every day, 99% of the games you play, there's going to be games where you literally have nothing in the tank and you kind of just going up to the plate and whatever it is for those guys that are playing every day. But for the majority of the time, those guys are given everything they have all the time. And even in the playoffs, they're focusing, they're still working out, they're doing all these things. And then if they don't win, it's awful. It's not fun to lose. But they get to go home knowing that they did everything they could to try to win. And I think fans, they're invested emotionally, they're invested financially, they're invested time-wise, they're invested, doing all these things during the season with the team, but they're not invested like the players are. And they don't, you can give them as many rah-rahs as you can, but you're not, aside from that, you're not, there's nothing you can do physically or mentally or emotionally to edge the other team out. So, I don't know. I think it's the fact that you can go out the whole season, play, and know that just wasn't meant to be this year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And for the players to feel like they did everything they could as a fan, it's like, we're limited on what we could do. As you said, we have grand ideas in our head of what we're capable of doing as fans. But at the end of the day, when a guy comes in who's throwing 98 from the left-hand side, like there's nothing that I am doing as a fan, either in the stadium or not in the stadium, to help in that situation.
Right.
So,
right. Exactly.
What was funny for me about this run and talking to you is that I feel like, remembering your time as a Dodger, one of the things that this Dodger team seemed to lack because of the depth and because of the injuries was a guy that kind of filled the role that you played in your seasons with the Dodgers, someone who could hit without necessarily getting consistent at bats. And it's not to say that I'm sure you loved not getting consistent at bats all of the time, but looking back, like you hit 250 with a 364 on base percentage as a substitute, and the Dodgers would have killed for a guy that could hit 250. And so I'm curious to hear from you, like, folks on the outside become so critical of the Matt Beatties and the Steven Souzas of the world. And I think we, as much as we might try to have an appreciation for how challenging of a role those guys are placed into, what would you say to a fan to help understand, like, when a guy gets pinch hit into a massive situation in the playoffs, how maybe unrealistic the fan's expectation is in that moment?
Yeah, I would try to give a comparison to the fan who maybe he's a plumber or a mailman, or he fixes, he paints cabinets, and you paint cabinets every once in a while, and then you get 10 days off, and then somebody calls you and says, hey, we got a scratch here on the cabinet, can you come do this, can you right now, just drive over and fix this thing. Well, yeah, you might be able to do it, but first you gotta load all your tools in your truck, then you gotta race over, and then you gotta, there's a little time limit. Maybe you're rushing to fix the scratch, and you might get the job done, but it never feels right. It feels rushed. It feels so to do that every single day for a full year, it's like, man, there's no night off, really. I mean, if you're a Matt Beattie, if you're a guy like me that came off the bench, you are always ready. You're like that guy sitting on his couch with his phone waiting for somebody to call with the problem, so it's tough, and it wears on you mentally.
Do you find yourself kind of like identifying with those guys in those spots? Like when you see a Matt Beattie that becomes like a topic of conversation or something, like, do you feel like a certain kinship with guys like that?
Definitely. So when I came up, we had, trying to think who was the bench guy. Like we had, like a Skip Schumacher, like, he played, that was kind of like his whole career. I mean, he played a lot in St. Louis, but he was somebody that he was really good at just filling in everywhere. So if you don't have a guy that has been doing it for years, and Chris Taylor did it for a minute when he came over from Seattle, but he quickly started playing every day.
Outgrew that position.
Yeah, he outgrew it real quick. So if you don't have a guy that can kind of show you the ropes on the bench and how to act and when to get ready. I mean, if you're getting ready in the third, you have to learn how to time it up. You have to learn, okay, you read the game, pitcher's stinking right now. It might be who's first off the bench. If so it's something that is probably not taught right now, especially with so many guys coming up and down throughout baseball. I mean, how many transactions were there this year? Instead of having, 3 guys that you can rely on day in and day out. So,
yeah. Awesome. Well, one of the reasons I specifically wanted to talk to you is because as I looked ahead to free agency this year, I mean, you know a bunch of these guys that are up. Like, these are guys that sort of were coming into the league when you were there. And so before I ask about maybe a specific guy like Clayton Kershaw, I'm curious, and you mentioned something to me offline that maybe you could repeat a little bit, but the Dodgers as a free agent destination, I'm curious, like, I think as Dodger fans, we assume like it's LA, it's warm weather, like deep pockets, and you're going to compete for a World Series every year. But is that like an accurate? I mean, because we have guys like Anthony Rendon who come up in free agency and basically say, I have no interest in going there specifically. So I'm curious from a player's perspective. I mean, is the Dodgers as a free agent destination as amazing as maybe we make it out to be?
I think it's trickier than that. I think you have to find the right personality. I think you have to find somebody that enjoys people walking in your locker room all the time, celebrities, people asking you for things all the time. The roped off session during BP, is filled every day. You go to St. Louis and, Paul Goldschmidt can go to the local grocery store and people are like, hey, what's up, Paul? It's not, if Clayton Kershaw goes to the grocery store in LA, people, that's not feasible for him. So there has to be a certain personality that is drawn to that scenario. And there's not a lot of guys love baseball. A lot of guys would love to play for LA, warm weather, no rain, aside from the traffic and taxes, but there are very many great draws to being in LA, but there's also great draws, in the Midwest and in the North, in the South. So
sure.
You got to find the right guy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you mentioned Kershaw. I mean, I'm not pretending that like you've had in-depth conversation. I'm not looking for inside information here, but knowing Kershaw, having played with him for, I would imagine basically your entire time with the Dodgers, he was there.
Mhm.
Do you think there's any chance he puts on a uniform other than the Dodgers uniform?
I think the last time I talked to him about this was probably a year ago or more, because he foresaw it coming. I know it's something he's been thinking about for a while. Obviously, if you're with somebody for as long as he has been, and has the background that he has, and he also understands the history of baseball. He understands, maybe what it would have looked like if Pujols stayed in St. Louis. Joe DiMaggio, staying in. Just there is something about guys that stay with the same organization that ages well in the baseball community.
Yeah.
Nowadays, people bounce around, crazily, but Clayton's different. I think he understands that aspect of baseball history and what that would mean to the fans. He's got a great life ahead of him. Whether he retires now, he goes to LA, he goes to wherever.
Yeah.
His name's not going to be. I don't think his name's going to be tarnished by his decision he makes
Totally.
at all. So he's obviously, I think he's weighing all the options.
Would you be more surprised if he played for a team other than the Dodgers or if he retired? Which of those two would be more of a shock to your system?
I think if he played for another team other than the Dodgers, I think it's different. Like I think it was crazy not crazy, but Buster Posey's 34.
Yeah.
He
due to make $20 million.
Yeah. And, he had a great year.
Right.
He made the switch to first base. So his knees aren't, feeling like they were probably 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think that was more of a shock than I think if Clayton was like, you know what, I'm done. That's a lot of miles on your arm. I mean, he could have thrown a ball to the moon and back. How many pitches he threw for the Dodgers. So it wouldn't surprise me if he retired. It wouldn't surprise me if he stayed in LA, and he wouldn't surprise me if he went and played for someone else. But
got it. Do you have, I mean, like do you have a great Kershaw story? Like, do you have a sort of a something that you think of, the first thing you think of when you think of Kershaw that kind of you tell friends of yours to kind of explain to them what type of guy he is, both on the field or off the field?
No, I hope hopefully he wouldn't be embarrassed if he ever heard this, but I don't tell this to people. This is a little nugget for you. But when we first went to Low A, it was his first. So he signed, went to Florida for a little bit, and then that next year we were all in Low A in Michigan together, and we knew, like, people, what they signed for is public. So we knew he made a lot of money when he decided to come play for the Dodgers, and we were looking for a place to rent. We rented a duplex. It was me, Preston Mattingly, some Australian kid, Clayton Kershaw, and Parker Brooks. And we were all really good, close buddies. We became friends in spring training. We got this little duplex together. And we're going to like Walmart and getting stuff like blow up mattresses and renting furniture, and we're doing it separately. And then like when we knocked on the door, like, we're done. Let's check out what you guys got. Let's see your setup. And this dude that made, like, I don't remember his signing bonus. It could have been $1 million, $2 million, $5 million. I don't remember what it was, but it had an M after the number. And he has a blow up mattress in his duplex, and that's the only thing in his room. I'm like, who is this guy?
That's awesome.
It was cool. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, I didn't realize that you guys sort of came up together through the ranks, but I've always wondered about those dynamics. Like, you look around and it's like, oh, this guy was a first round pick, and this guy was like, an undrafted free agent basically. And it's like, you're coexisting next to each other. But like you said, it's in my job, like, I don't know what the people next to me make, but in your job, that's always an interesting dynamic.
Yeah. He's just, I mean, he's obviously he's matured since he's been 19 and 20, but he's internally, he's the same man. Like, if he goes to the casino now, he's still only going to put $20 on red. It's not going to be a $2,000 bet.
Yeah.
So,
love it.
Yeah.
Okay. Another guy that you played with, Kenley Jansen.
Mm-hmm.
This is an interesting one to me, because when you look at all the free agents, Kenley's the one that I feel like I mean, I don't claim to know a bunch about any of these guys. I think Clayton Kershaw has been in our lives long enough that some of us feel like we understand bits and pieces of him. Whereas Kenley, he's a competitor. He's fantastic. Talk about another guy like Posey, who had just an unbelievable season. For Kershaw, I'd be shocked to see him in another jersey. There's something about Kenley in my mind that wouldn't shock me if he did decide to go elsewhere, whether that was because the Dodgers offer wasn't on par. But what do you like from your perspective? Again, not as somebody who maybe talks to him all the time, but like, is this a guy who's a lifelong Dodger? Is this a guy who you think might be ready for another challenge, a fresh start somewhere else? Because I mean, I know there's been ups and downs with the fans and getting booed and getting taken out of the closer role and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, one thing I know about Kenley is that I think that they signed him when he was 16.
Okay.
So he's been a Dodger for almost
Crazy.
20 years. So they signed him when he was a kid, basically. So he more than anybody is like a Dodger.
Yeah.
He grew up in Kershaw. So like, who was his favorite baseball team was whatever favorite baseball player it was at the time.
Yeah.
It wasn't like Clayton, who had, he grew up a Rangers fan.
Yeah.
And then he had to split his love for the Dodgers. It was like when he signed when he was that young, that was his team.
Yeah.
So his team is the Dodgers now. And he's good at handling criticism. I mean, the guy was the best catching prospect we had in a really long time, and he couldn't hit. And he handled that well. I mean, he transitioned right into pitching, and so I know he can handle criticism. But as far as that would be a guy that I think you shouldn't be surprised if he takes less money just to stay where it feels like home.
Okay. As a big guy, when you saw Kenley Jansen crouching down and getting into a catcher stance, did that make you uncomfortable?
No, you know what? So I started playing with him when he was 18. I played with him 18, 19, 20, and then he transitioned to pitching, and then he just took off and was throwing 100. So they sent him to Double-A and then the big leagues real quick. Yeah. But he was my size. He was like 6'5", but he was like 100 and he was like 100. If you go look up Kenley Jansen pictures in the minor leagues, I mean, he looks like a stick.
Okay,
it's unbelievable. He's skinny.
So it's not the guy anybody sees today.
No,
that's hilarious.
No. So
that's awesome.
Beefcakes now. Yeah, beefcakes.
Okay, Corey Seager, another guy. I mean, I love this because these are the beauty is like how many teams like the Dodgers can talk to somebody who played for the organization 4 or 5 years ago, and yet all of the same guys basically are there. I mean, I was looking through the roster your last year with the team, and I think Muncy was like the only guy basically from this current core. Like Buehler made an appearance, Urias was there, Turner,
I
Taylor.
I play with those guys. I play with Muncy. I play with I play with those guys. So I know
because was your last year when Muncy was in AAA?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when I got sent down, I got optioned in middle, like right before I got traded, and I played with them for a little while. And then the year before, I was hurt, rehabbed. Muncy was there, and Walker was coming up. So
crazy.
Yeah.
Looking
Seager,
at
you want to talk about Caesar?
Yeah, Seager. I mean, like we all know what this guy is like when he's dialed in. I mean, he's one of the most. Like there are different levels of being locked in. And when Seager is locked in, I'm not sure there's another player in baseball that seems as locked in. It just feels like everything is getting barreled. Everything is 100-mile-an-hour exit velocity. Obviously, the concerns with him are injuries. Now, you can't count this last injury against him, just a hit by pitch that breaks his hand. But for you, I mean, if you were the Dodgers, would you bet on Seager for 7 to 8 years at like $35 million a year?
What are you going to do with Trey?
Well, so this is I'll ask you this question. If you don't want to answer this question, you don't have to. Okay. For me, we've said on our show, I think if I were the Dodgers, I would look at Trey Turner and I would look at Corey Seager. I put the same offer on the table, and both of them, I said, basically the first one to sign gets it. Like we need to lock one of these two guys up so that we've got a solution at shortstop. We played a mystery game where we put 4 different guys and their numbers over the past 3 seasons up. And it was Correa, Trevor Story, Corey Seager, and Trey Turner. And Trey Turner is better than all of those guys in basically every category except for defense. We didn't put stolen bases on there because it would have given away that Trey Turner was one of the 4. But I mean, Correa and Story are the elite defensive guys with good offense. Seager and Trey Turner are elite offensive guys with average defense. Trey Turner actually grades out better offensively. And again, that's not even taking into account stolen bases. So I think that's the decision. I mean, from your perspective as just a baseball fan, Trey Turner, Corey Seager, how would you compare those two, and how would you try and make a decision between? I mean, because obviously, look, the fan who doesn't care about the owner's money would say, well, just sign Seager long-term to play third base, sign Trey long-term to play shortstop, and we don't have any issues.
Yeah.
Justin Turner is your DH, and we just call it good. But how would you navigate that?
Well, so you also have to understand that Corey Seager has a really tough agent for himself.
Totally.
I think it's Scott Boras.
Yep.
So Boras' whole MO is to get as much money as possible.
Totally.
Wherever possible.
Yeah.
So you have to consider that if you're an organization. I think there'll be a good adjustment period for Seager. I think Seager, how old is Seager? 26?
27, I think, maybe.
27?
I'll check on that.
I think that's a really I think that's a year that you do see guys get hurt when they're starting to approach 28, 29. Yeah. He's a big guy. He used to be, he's still fast. So he still runs pretty well. And so I think he's going to adjust into his body and age. I think he's an athlete. I think he'll learn how to run down to first, learn, when to go 100%. So the injuries, I don't think, he takes care of himself. He works out. I think he'll be all right. And that's a guy, if he has to miss 3 or 4 weeks with a hamstring, that's a long season. So, if I got to pick, man, I think a left-handed guy in the bat and a left-handed hitting shortstop that hits for power, average, on base,
not afraid of the big moment.
Yeah, like he's got experience. He's got a brother that's so
yeah.
I don't know.
How
long is Turner Speed going to be?
Yeah.
Look at Carl Crawford when he turned 32, 33. It was like.
Yeah. Do you think
anymore?
Nobody really knows the answer on the outside? I mean, and to me, it makes sense that as far as the position switch for Seager goes, I understand that if you're Corey Seager, you want to play a shortstop up until the day when you sign the last contract of your career, which is going to be a 7 to 10 year contract. And then from there, I imagine that maybe his stance softens a bit, sort of like Machado did. Like, no, I'm a shortstop. Okay, if you're going to give me $300 million, I'll play whatever position you want me to play. Do you think Seager's that type of guy? Like, do you think Seager signs this contract and then 2 years from now, if third base makes the most sense for him, that he's comfortable playing third base?
Yeah. As long as he's under contract, I think that's the team's decision.
Yeah.
Were you going to say no?
Totally. Well, and again, like now it's sort of like he has the leverage up until today, because like last year they couldn't, or 2 years ago or whatever. It's like you need to sort of have gloves on and be careful, because if you want to sign that guy long term. But like I said, once you sign the long-term contract, to me, it doesn't even seem like it would be an issue, because he's like, well, I don't have to get worried about getting shortstop money on my next contract because I'm already getting shortstop money. And if you want to put me at third base.
Yeah. There's also, it sounds stupid, but like how much money can a team make off of Seager versus Turner? How many Seager jerseys are going to sell? How many appearances are going to do? I think being around is valuable for that team. That name Seager now has worth to the Dodgers. So
totally,
they'll offset that with the price it's going to cost to keep them.
Yeah. Okay. A couple more questions. Chris Taylor, we'll shift to the last guy. Now, I think, was his first season your last season? Is that right? Or was there his
first season, 2017 was his first year? Is that his first year?
I was looking.
15?
I know you both were on the roster on 2017. I can't remember if he was there the year before.
I think he came in 2016.
Okay. What can you tell us about Taylor? He's another one of these guys that it seems like everybody in the clubhouse absolutely loves this guy. And yet, like, from the outside, you just sort of like, he's almost like a mysterious guy. Like it's sort of, you just get short, straight answers. Like, and I mean, I don't think he's trying to hide something. I just think he's that dude. Like, is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. Chris Taylor is awesome. CT3. I think he's one of those guys that if you wanted to sign him, he would be reasonable enough to like say, I want 4 years, 60 million, and he'd be worth every penny. Or he could say like, I want 4 years, 30 million, and that's all he wanted. Like, I think that's a guy. Like his value is where do you want him to play? Where do you want him to hit? Do you want to come off the bench? Do you want him to, So
well, and that's what's interesting with him is he seems like a guy that genuinely is fine being a utility player. Like I think with Jock and with Kike and some of these other guys, there was obviously a sense of like, they want to play every day. Obviously they want to play one position ideally. And it makes sense. But with Taylor, like, he's been playing every day, even if it's at 4 different positions. But do you think he genuinely seems like there's a part of him, he is wired in such a way where he actually enjoys the fact that he can play center field one day, left field the next day, shortstop the next day, third base after that, and then second base. Like, it doesn't seem like that's oh shoot, I don't want to go back to the Dodgers because they're going to make me do this, as much as like, he just seems like a baseball player that genuinely doesn't care. Yeah.
I think but you said it. You said it really well. He doesn't care. Like he enjoys having to bring 3 gloves out to batting practice.
Love it.
He likes it. It's like a point of pride for him. So,
okay. Dave Roberts, lame duck manager right now. He's got 1 year of the contract left. Another guy you're familiar with. I think people on the outside, it's sort of like the baseball player thing. Like the fans can get more frustrated about some of this stuff. Like, it seems like everybody inside the locker room, inside the clubhouse loves this guy. What are fans on the outside maybe underappreciating? What is it about Roberts that maybe the average fan doesn't appreciate about what he does, what he is so good at, that guys inside the clubhouse seem to?
Well, he's really good at checking in with guys. He's really good at he makes it a way that you can be honest with him without feeling bad about it. I think, skip my knees bothering me, or whatever it is. He's a very good encourager. He's believable. So even if you're in the outfield and you're like, man, what is this guy doing? There's the other half. You're like, well, he's doing it. So there's got to be a reason for it.
Yeah.
So it's the problem with managers is that it's really easy to, how do you grade a manager?
Right. Totally.
What are you managing? Like, oh, he's managing 642 this year. Like there's you can't assess it by a number. You assess it by his team's winning percentage, right?
And that number is very good. If you're Dave Roberts, it's one of like the top 10 winning percentage in baseball history.
Right. And also division titles, World Series, like all these things that he has helped get LA. So it's easy to say, what are you doing pitching him? Well, you don't know. Like he's in the locker room. He knows that the guy's arm's about to fall off in the bullpen.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's funny, like interacting with Dodger fans. And like, for me, like the Dave Roberts, if Dave Roberts were, not as nice of a person as he seems to be, it's kind of like, he would just say, look at the Padres this year. Like, if you want to see what happens when you put together a team that is unbelievably talented, has all the hopes and aspirations and expectations, and we just take for granted that we're competing for the division every year and making the NLCS just in like down years, basically.
Yeah.
And yet there are teams out there that have just as much talent on paper and yet like had a losing record this year. And so if you want to see a gap between how valuable a manager like Dave Roberts is, to your point, even if there are some decisions that maybe not every single person can wrap their mind around, on the whole, what he's able to do over the 162 game season seems to be super significant,
Yeah. Well, so to your point, the Padres, unbelievable team, right?
Yeah.
I think that they would be compared to like a 2013-14 Dodgers, like just the stars you see, like we had Dre, Kemp, Crawford, name of
Gonzalez,
Loney, And so if you look back and you look at like what Mattingly did to be able to like manage all of those different personalities and superstardom, like none of us got in fights in the dugouts. Like I think part of being a good manager is like the positive is this guy's positive, this guy's positive, this guy's, and then when something's negative going on, like taking all that on and then like having all the players be mad at you instead of each other so that they can still continue to function on the field. So yeah, the Padres at the end of the year were self-destructive. So and that, you know, that happened long before it actually happened.
Yeah. Okay, let me end with one last question. It's about a free agent, not currently on the Dodgers, but I'm guessing a guy that you probably get asked about more than any other player from your time as a Dodger. I was just scrolling through social media and I saw Yasiel Puig. This is a guy who's 30 years old. He's a free agent. You played with him. You shared the clubhouse with him. I'm curious, like, he's 30. Like he's 2.5 years older than Corey Seager as a guy that we're talking about signing an 8 to 10 year contract. He's a guy who offensively and defensively, I mean, like it's never been an issue of on the field play. So you take this wherever you want, but I guess my question is, are you surprised he wasn't in the league last year? Do you think he'll make it back to the league this year?
Yeah. I mean, obviously he had some stuff come up last year.
Yeah.
Like, and then it kind of ran through this whole year. I think I just read something the other day where that's all kind of put behind him. I don't know. I don't understand why like a Baltimore Orioles who has zero money guaranteed to any players next year wouldn't, even if it's like, just give the guy the minimum.
Right. It seems like he'd take it.
Yeah. Why? Like, what are you going to lose?
Sell some jerseys, sell some tickets.
Yeah. You're going to lose your reputation, Orioles. Like you lost that in 2000. So, I don't know. So, yeah, Puig he can still run, hit, throw. Yeah. I think he probably understands if he did get a chance, it'd be his last chance. Yeah. Nobody wants to screw up their last chance when they're 30.
Yeah.
So, what do you got to lose?
Yeah. Why not? Well, I mean, I know there are Dodger fans last year that are looking at some of the guys that were getting pulled up from AAA and like, you know, there's like, if somebody like Puig would have maybe been a better option in some of these moments, but obviously that goes back to clubhouse stuff. And I would imagine that the Dodgers side of things is closed forever with him, but I'm surprised that there's not another team out there that wouldn't, like you said, take a chance on him just for.
He needs to do like a name change. He needs to change his name like Meta World Peace did. You know?
There you go. Yeah. Right. No, totally. Well, hey, Scott, I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. As I said, I was a big fan of yours when you played for the Dodgers and loved seeing it. And so we appreciate you coming on, talking some baseball with us, and best of luck in retirement. Come back anytime.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. Have a good one.
The best team holding a trophy high in the air. The Los Angeles Dodgers, champions of the baseball world.